Okay, we're still discussing what documents to use at different stages in the process. So we've gone through the main things: um, summary judgment applications, opposing a summons, opposing an eviction. But there's a few extra things that come in. Heads of argument. That is um, heads of argument. Once you file all your papers, the other side's filed theirs. You will then file your heads of argument, which is all the legal argument, nothing to do with the facts, what happened, etc., but what the legal consequences of these facts are, and these need to be also filed at court and served on our opponents, usually by email. Cape Town is very strict. It's like 10 days before or 5 days before, not counting weekends. In other jurisdictions, it's a little bit less serious, but certainly a good few days before the hearing. So there's where all the heads of argument are, and they vary. They'll change. They'll be added to. When I say, okay, we need one of these heads of argument, and you'll know that's where you find them. And when all else fails and you decide you need to appeal to the higher court, what you do is you put in a leave to appeal, which also needs to be filed and served, and also stops execution. Just like a rescission stops execution on somebody's house, it stops them getting evicted, it stops the house being sold at auction. Appeal also does. In fact, appeal probably does more. So here's an appeal on the fire story. Here's an appeal. I should name these better, but I will do. But there's a leave to appeal against the sequestration. When the High Court has ordered the sequestration, you want to appeal to the Supreme Court of Appeal or the Constitutional Court. Then they'll the leave to appeal documents. There's only one leave to appeal. You don't need a notice of motion and a founding affidavit. You just need one appeal document. But yeah, one goes to the High Court, and then you try that, and you set that down, and you argue that, and then if that doesn't work, you can then appeal to the Supreme Court of Appeal, and then they will decide whether they want to hear that, and then if they don't, then it goes to the Constitutional Court. So that's leaves to appeal, and then there's the reverse mortgage scheme. That's this terrible thing where somebody comes along and cons an old lady or some vulnerable person out of her home, offers her a loan, she signs for what she thinks is the loan. It turns out to be actually a scheme to transfer the property away from her. She's signed to transfer her house. 2 years later, she finds out the house is transferred out her name and somebody else is trying to repossess it. This is how we get her back in our house. Reverse mortgage scheme refers to that, and these are the documents we would use. The securitization additions, that's all the extra documents we've had from all the clients that have gone and done 100 WinDeed searches and proven that the banks are not registering the deeds with the deeds registry, the ceded mortgage bonds, as they should be. And so that's what that is. And so these are all the documents that need to be sent to, well, I'll actually create two folders here: documents to be sent and other precedent documents that we can use for new clients that need to sign up for this same thing. So let me just, since I have the privilege of pressing pause, I'm going to do some. Right, so in seconds I've worked magic on this folder. So you can see that there's two Word documents here. One's the general securitization affidavit, all banks, and one's the particular securitization affidavit, all banks. What that basically means is that you get the client to fill them both in and to sign them before a commissioner of oaths. They're both almost exactly the same. The particular one has a heading for the particular case. The general one doesn't have a heading for the particular case. He signs that for all cases. So basically, if you've got 10 clients, you will find that the one that pertains to their particular case is the particular one, but they also might have 9 different affidavits, all from different people with no headings in their documents, saying that they've found exactly the same thing, that when they've gone through their WinDeed searches. And then these general securitization affidavits, here they are. Here's Ed Scott's general affidavit. you'll see it's got no heading up here, and it says that it's not very well formatted, but never mind. And then he goes on with 100 Windeed searches that he's done, and he's not found anywhere they've been endorsed to the right entity. Usually they're endorsed to ABSA or whatever. You don't find them indexed as securitization vehicles. And so you send all these deed searches. You would need to have the affidavit from each one. This one's not got the affidavit, so I'll have to put that into that folder. But you check that there was the 100 Windeed searches and an affidavit from each of these clients, and it will build up over time. And you send all that as evidence to the opposing attorneys, and you file at least part of that at the court. Now, this Garth Seatsman's affidavit, he's a statistician, and he's the one that's saying that analysing these numbers doesn't make sense. The banks must be kidding us on. This must be fraud because the numbers just don't add up. So that affidavit also needs to go with any case that involves securitization additions. Okay, couple of ones left. We haven't gone into selling for too little, but we use that summons when we do. Most people are quite familiar with that are working with us. Posing default judgment, removing bar. What happens with summons if you don't respond for long enough? The other side can do a thing like putting you under bar. Now that's not as nice as it sounds, whereas you've been drinking for a while and suddenly you can't stand up and you're under the bar. It's not that at all. It means that now you're not allowed to plead, you're not allowed to give your summons, and then you've got to make application with a notice of motion and an application as usual, and an affidavit to get the bar removed, and you use that default for that. And then the last thing is paragraphs to add. We sometimes have little paragraphs that can be added in any of the documents about the papers being out of date, about the quantum. Quantum in law just means the amount of money, like the payment is wrong because of this, and we'll have that additional paragraph there. Consequential damages. We think in addition to the damages that we're claiming from the bank, there's more, and so that can be added as well. So when I say to add these, or you want to add these, you can do that. Okay, and that is how to find and use the relevant documents.